The Building Brands Marketing Podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Breuer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who's successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. We're continuing in our Legal Leaders series today. And today we have a special guest I'm excited to bring on the show. We have Ryan McComber, partner with Figari Davenport. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Excited to dig in with you today. You know, Figari Davenport was one of the first litigation boutiques in Dallas. And, you know, we work with a lot of different Texas law firms. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more about what inspired the founders to break away from that traditional big law model and how has that shaped the firm's identity as it stands today?
Well, actually, you're exactly right. The firm started back in 1986. It was started by a group of trial lawyers who were the lead litigation lawyers at a firm known as Johnson and Swanson, which was then the largest law firm in Dallas. And their idea for starting a firm was they wanted an opportunity to have a smaller firm with just dedicated trial attorneys. And they really didn't like, as we come to find out, the kind of red tape associated with a full service law firm and the things that go along with that, which I think still continues somewhat today in a lot of the larger firms. And so they started out with just a handful of lawyers, and started their litigation practice, and we've been going strong since then.
Amazing. Incredible, Ryan. So breaking away from, what I'm going to call big box law to create this boutique firm. Bold move. Risky, but bold.
It was risky, and they, the rumor has it, although no one ever confirmed, that they borrowed some money to do it and basically decided that, this was going to be the commitment they made to try to make this work. And as I understand it, within a relatively short amount of time, they were so busy that, they'd paid off their loan and have really gone on from there. So
that's impressive. So looking back, are there any major challenges that the founders faced that you're aware of in those early years that they overcame? And could you elaborate on those at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main challenges with any litigation boutique, and especially when they started out, it was frankly, they had more work than they knew what to do with. Traditionally, Ernie Figari, one of our founders, he was known as the hardest working man in Dallas. And there was a Dallas Observer article about him. He had a day secretary and a night secretary and was known to bill at least 3,000 hours a year in the main part of his practice. So I think that really was a concern early on because they had a small amount of attorneys. They had young associates they brought with them. But it was really just the fact that they were having to work pretty hard to meet the expectations and needs of their clients. And I think that's a challenge for small boutique firms now. We're typically known as being able to do the same complex litigation work that a large firm does, but you typically do it without the expense and the overhead of having a bunch of lawyers on a case, which tends to lead to, some long hours when things are busy. And that was definitely one of their challenges early on, is just making sure that they got all the work done that they had.
That makes sense. So many larger firms, they have that structured hierarchy where only a few select attorneys really get the trial experience. I know in my research into Figari Davenport and talking with you, there's a lot of trial experience in-house there. So how does Figari Davenport ensure that those younger attorneys gain the real trial experience, and how has that been a key part of the brand as the brand has developed?
I think it started more of as you had to really just learn on the fly because there wasn't enough people or places to hide as a young associate. And it developed into kind of the theme of our practice is that our expectation for any attorney that comes to the firm by the time they make partner, that they're able to take a case from the beginning all the way through trial and through appeal. And so, that really the way we staff our cases, they're staffed traditionally one a partner, one associate. Larger cases, obviously, they're going to have more, but the associate is expected and encouraged to jump in the deepest part of the pool that they're able to get that experience. And frankly, that's one of the reasons I came to the firm in 2007. My wife had been at the firm. She clerked as a first year and a second year and joined the firm as a litigation attorney. And I really wanted that opportunity to get in and sharpen my trial skills, which sometimes those opportunities aren't there in the bigger firm. Like you said, if you're the fifth or sixth associate on a chain, the likelihood of you getting a deposition or a meaningful hearing or going to trial and taking a significant role in that trial is pretty unlikely. And so when I came over in 2007, one of my first memories of the firm, we had 3 copies of the Texas Pattern Jury Charge in our library back when people had libraries.
Yeah.
And we had so many trials going at the same time that we had to send someone out to get a couple of more copies of the Pattern Jury Charges because we had so many people in trial at those first few months that I was there that we had to get more Pattern Jury Charges. So that's the expectation. If I have an associate and our associates are expected, if we're working on a case, unless they're really told otherwise, they're expected to work it up, take the depositions. If they draft a motion, they're expected to argue it in court. Obviously, once they've established themselves and their abilities to do that. But that's ultimately the goal. The less at this point in my career that I have to take depositions or go have a discovery hearing, frankly, the better. And we do represent clients nationwide. So if I can avoid travel, young people tend to enjoy traveling to go do things more often than the older folks that have kids and commitments at home. So our expectation is we want them to learn and we want them to bite off as much as they can chew. And frankly, after they're here a few years, the hope is we've trained them and mentored them to the point where, they can be trusted to do that on their own.
Yeah, this is gold because one of the big components of a law firm, especially a boutique firm, is not just talent acquisition, but talent retention. I teach a workshop called Scaling the Unscalable, and it's specifically for service based businesses. And it really has a segment to it that touches on the point that, you know, the people are such a critical piece of the whole business model here, and also the brand as the brand scales over time. And in your case, what you're describing is a model that not only is going to attract new talent, but it's going to keep talent there for that initial period and the desire to develop and really just build professionally. With us in the marketing agency space, we've been that agency here in South Texas. We're in the Crossroads area, about 2 hours from all the major metros. And with us being at, kind of the top of that space, the people fresh out of college who want a marketing agency job, they look to us first. They know they're going to get the real hands-on development, the in the trenches experience to exponentially grow that skill set in a very short time frame. And so I see that being of a huge advantage to then also translate to positioning the brand as a stronger, more stabilized brand. And with that, do your it sounds like really your more experienced attorneys really roll up their sleeves. They do some uh, four-legged work with the younger attorneys. How do you go about kind of mentoring and preparing them for the complexities of high stakes trials in a real environment that other attorneys younger in their career don't get to experience that early on, so they may not be as prepared for?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because now that I'm 20 plus years into this, young lawyers learn a lot, frankly, just by seeing it done.
Uh,
And I think the more time you spend in the courtroom, the more time you spend in the courtroom with people who have experience and are excellent trial lawyers, you pick up those skills. One of the things that Mark Davenport, our founder, always told us, he's an amazing trial lawyer, tried hundreds of jury trials. Uh, and he was a guy that said, you have to be yourself. You can't go into the courtroom and expect to be me or expect to be anyone else or any of the top 5 attorneys in Dallas who are trial lawyers. You have to develop your own style. And the only way that you can do that is repetition. It's like anything. The more you're in court, the more you take depositions, the more you're in trial. You pick up that skill set, you learn how you do it, you get comfortable in it. And frankly, the terrifying part when say you're at a firm where you don't have a lot of trial experience is you're going to trial with less experienced attorneys, and it's hard to provide any mentorship during those opportunities just because the trial lawyer themselves doesn't have that much experience, and so they're pretty much scattered. And so we've had the opportunity to take I've taken multiple lawyers through their first trials as young associates, and you have to make time during that process to make sure you're teaching them, explaining to them why you do certain things, whether it's through cross-examination or arguments you make with respect to exhibits. And it's amazing just in that atmosphere and the tenseness of that atmosphere. There's so much learning that takes place because young lawyers commit these things to memory. They commit the skills they learn to memory really, really quickly. And then if you can also provide them an opportunity during that same trial to cross-examine some witnesses, and frankly, it's so much more beneficial to a client and to the overall success of your case to work in young associates, because one, juries like them a lot more than they like kind of your older grizzled attorneys who seem a little more gruff.
Mm-hmm.
You can play somewhat of a good cop, bad cop. The expectation for the lead trial attorney is that sometimes you've got to be a little bit more aggressive in your cross examinations and protecting of your client's interests. But at the same time, you need time as a partner during a trial to, whether it's dealing with an issue that came up in evidence, whether it's dealing with an appellate issue you've got to deal with, having the opportunity for your associates to mix in and cross-examine or do direct examinations of witnesses or follow up on issues that the court needs guidance on. It's really it's such a learning experience, and it's so thrilling for young attorneys to get in there. I remember when I was my first trials, I mean, you're so excited to actually use that skill set that you learn. But that's the thing we offer, going back to the marketing aspect and how it affects your marketing for your company. We do try to sell an opportunity to young associates that we can tell you, if you do come here, you're going to learn these skills if you stick it out and commit yourself to learning them. And so whether it's here where you're going to be here long term at our firm, whether you're going to go start your own firm or go somewhere else, you will have a skill set that you can take with you to know how to do these things. So that is a big selling point. And frankly, mentorship, a lot of times we work hard to provide it, but a lot of times it's just working together on a project with that associate that provides that learning experience. And whether we can offer anything else that's really enticing to someone, if you're someone that wants to be a trial lawyer, obviously that's something that we can offer as part of your training.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's segue a little bit, talking about marketing and commercial litigation firms are an interesting one, right? Because they often rely on referrals and existing business networks rather than your traditional marketing efforts, such as, the billboard PI firms, things like that. What strategies have you found were most effective in maintaining brand visibility and credibility in a competitive space without some of those traditional approaches that other types of law use?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you say it. I mean, it's a constant struggle for firms that are litigation boutiques, I think, with respect to marketing. You've obviously have to focus on your brand. You have to focus on your talent. You have to focus on being the best lawyers that you can be, I think, first. And then you've got to figure out how to tell other people about that without buying billboards or doing some of these things, because most of our clients are sophisticated purchasers of legal services. If they're a nationwide company, they hire hundreds of lawyers a year. If they're regional companies, this usually isn't their first time to deal with litigation, and they usually have someone, whether it's through employment law issues that come up, licensing issues, any other type of issues. So they have some contact with attorneys. And so really, like you said, it's word of mouth to a lot of it, whether it's other lawyers, other in-house counsel that you work with. Whenever an issue comes up, you frankly want to be part of that conversation and get a referral. And so there's some things you can do. I think we've learned that there's some expectation on clients that you have certain visibility, whether it's through social media, websites, things like that. Not that they're going to look at that information to decide on what lawyer to pick, but if you make it to that conversation, they're certainly going to look at your website and look at your bios and things like that to see if they want to progress to the next step and hire you. So your struggle is, how do you stay in the conversation, and what type of marketing can you do to stay in that conversation? And so, over the years you do things, obviously you want to, speaking engagements, there's things we engage in. We donate our time to volunteer activities in the legal market, where you'd have an opportunity to make relationships with people that may be acquiring legal services. Our associates, we've been very fortunate, are very active in bar activities and leadership roles in those activities. And even if you're not looking to hire or not hire that many, it's really a good idea, we found, to at least make sure you're in contact with law students and going on campus to make people know your name. And so at least you've got the visibility necessary if someone comes across a piece of litigation. And ultimately in our field, it's a lot of times they'll bid it out to various firms. And really the goal is to get your opportunity to make your pitch. And once you get that, it really comes down to talent and ability at that point. And so it's really do whatever you can to make sure you're on the forefront of people's mind when they're trying to pick who the people they want to pick from.
Yeah, it's thought leadership, right? Like it's positioning your firm as that thought leader, that industry leader. I think this is a really critical piece. It's in the middle of the funnel. It's in that section of the consumer journey on the B2B side, that's trust and consideration. We're trying to build trust and consideration for them to use our firm over another firm. I feel like this is the area of marketing on the B2B side of law firms that so often gets forgotten. So many law firms, they go and they do the speaker opportunities. They do, things like this, a podcast, things like that. And a lot of times they'll have different presentations or different resources that they've put together, such as, a slide deck or things like that, to share as educational or informational pieces to offer valuable content to audiences, right? And I feel like a lot of times that same content should be repurposed when a prospective client is in the top of the funnel, kind of working their way through the middle. There are things like, automated email sequences that, can be introduced through a CRM. Also blog content, things like that, downloadable resources or templates on the website, that a lot of that same content that's used in these other areas could be repurposed to nurture that lead. Lead nurturing, in my experience, is the single most undervalued tactic of B2B law firms in the very middle of the funnel when someone's in that trust and consideration stage, because they typically want to look at two qualifying factors. A, experience. And you could kind of link that with knowledge and expertise and all of that, right? Is this person going to be capable of doing what I asked of them? And then B, reputation. What is their reputation, their trial history? What do other people say about them? All of that is social proof. And I feel like that's a missing link sometimes in the strategy. What are your thoughts? Do you feel like, that's something that is really pivotal to increasing brand presence when someone's in that trust and consideration stage?
I do. I think a lot of times some of the more specialized litigation that we do, when an opportunity comes up, they do find themselves looking at some of our more detailed written product that we put out, whether it's through, bar journal writing. We do some work with law review. We put out an annual survey of civil procedure with SMU here in Dallas. And I do think that stuff is very helpful, because not only does it provide some justification of your expertise and confirmation of your expertise, it provides some working information when making those type of decisions that they can use. and frankly, that, establishes your expertise if they can use that information and help them, and then also use it to get a client. I mean, I think that is a great strategy.
100%. Speaking of expertise, um, the buzzword the last couple of years in the industry is AI, right? AI
Right.
is becoming this major topic in the legal world. It's shifting the landscape a little bit. How do you see AI transforming litigation, and what are some of the biggest opportunities and risks you foresee in law firms utilizing AI driven tools?
Well, I think the risk was highlighted. A district court in Wyoming just issued a show cause order for some attorneys to provide an explanation as to why 5 of the cases cited in one of their briefs did not exist. And so, what we're seeing and what we're cautioning our associates and other people that are using these new skills and new opportunities with AI is, there are risks with that. A lot of courts have realized these issues and have actually ordered that to the extent you're using AI either for research or writing, you have to disclose it. Some courts have gone as far as not allowing those tools to be used in connection with filings with the court. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, like you said. Just my use recently of a lot of these AI products that we've been looking at and doing demos with these products, they've got some pretty amazing capabilities. What I have seen is their ability to utilize somewhat uh, complex information from Westlaw, Lexis, case histories, and in a pretty unique way and succinct way, boil down some legal concepts. The problem with that is always like anything with the law. The law deals with gray areas. One of the things, my first research assignments when I came to a law firm in labor and employment, I was like, oh, I already know this. These are the 5 things we need to look at. And my first research project was, what about the gap between number 4 and number 5? That's what I have a question about. And I think AI has some limitations on making those type of judgment calls, which will certainly get better. But I think at this point, the risks of using research, you're either going to have to use it in a way that simply confirms what you already found, use it to seek out some concepts you're having difficulty tracking down that gives you some sort of head start in doing your own legal research. But I think at this point, the risks of having an AI generate your own brief are extraordinarily high. And certainly, what you don't want with an associate who's trying to learn how to research, how to articulate arguments they're going to make in front of the court, to use it as a crutch. But I do think it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's something we're working now to incorporate into our practice with respect to research issues. And I think we'll continue to
Sure.
work on that, obviously, with these safeguards in place. I think the real benefit of AI is going to be for analyzing and boiling down large document production issues. I mean, because what we've seen is AI is highly capable of taking a huge amount of data and finding things that you're looking for, which it may have taken an associate, 50 hours to find. Now, that's a
Hmm.
great benefit to your client. You're adding a lot of legal efficiency there. And I think it's concerning, frankly, to a lot of big firms because they generate a lot of profit off of these type of assignments where, and I've done it. I was in a room of 25 associates that went through hundreds of bankers boxes of files, and that was considered kind of part of the thing you learn as an associate. Um, and you get better at that over the years and what you're looking for and how to efficiently go through large amounts of data. I think there's going to be a great benefit to that. And I think probably an expectation on the client's part to be able to use that technology to save money for what would typically been a very large expense in connection with a big piece of litigation.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's hit us on the marketing agency side too in terms of that reduction of billable hours. There's some marketing or some market research, competitor research that has been exponentially decreased. 20%, 25% of billable hours compared to what it was 3 or 4 years ago. Some roles that now are more hybrid roles that used to be specifically dedicated to that, because you don't have to uh, do as laborious of a process as you're used
Right.
to by utilizing some of those tools. The key takeaway I'm hearing is using it incrementally for small portions of projects in the right ways, not using it as the thing to just do the work for you. Basically, it's too good to be true. If all of a sudden it does the whole task for you,
Yeah.
that there's a reason. Just use it for the small increments of where it can be most useful. And it sounds like in some of the ways that you might be experiencing it, you're providing more value to the clients because you're able to shave off some of those billables in areas that, hey, if there's something that can do it much more efficiently and we save money on the end result to the client without suffering any of the quality, then this is good. This is good, positive use of AI. So I like that, Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, if you have a case come in immediately and you just want to give yourself an opportunity to look up a quick issue using AI, using the law research tools they have, it can give you a pretty succinct analysis of what you need to, at least on your initial conversation, get your arms around. And as a lawyer, you probably have some general sense of it anyway, but gives you a little bit of more talking points when you show up. So there's a lot of little incremental uses, which I think it's very helpful, at least so far in my experience. The interesting thing is dealing with it from other lawyers and non-lawyers, for example.
mhm.
Several years ago, I got a class action complaint that I was dealing with, and it was purportedly filed by some pro se individuals. And I'm looking at this 100-page complaint, and it somewhat seems legally accurate, or at least the argument seems somewhat legally accurate, but there were no cases cited in it. And but there was no typos, which is what you typically expect from someone who's going to file kind of a pro se document, not really knowing what they're doing. And so you have to learn how to deal with that in a way to contradict these AI type arguments and raise to the court. And that's been something interesting because that's not something that, we ever dealt with before the last couple of years with the creation of these AI document creation type systems. So,
Absolutely. And if you read them long enough, you start to sniff out some of the
yeah.
consistency that is typically are AI generated. Certain terminology, certain intros to paragraphs, that sort of stuff. I love talking AI. I love talking law. I love talking to industry experts. This has been awesome, Ryan. So let's close it out. I have a question that is one of my favorite questions. You've built a successful career and brand in commercial litigation, you as well as the other partners. What advice would you give to attorneys looking to establish themselves in a niche practice area and build a lasting reputation?
I mean, I think the best piece of advice, when I give talks to young associates of how to be a good lawyer and how to be a good associate, the things are really, it starts with learn to be a good lawyer first. Everything else will take care of itself if you learn to be a good lawyer. It's sometimes concerning for lawyers who are younger. I mean, it's hard to develop business when you don't have any gray hair and you go into meetings and you're the youngest person in the room. And eventually you're going to get there. And so the only thing you can do as a young lawyer working on building your brand is be the best lawyer that you can be first. Be the best associate you can be, then be the best lawyer you can be, and then when you've got the opportunity and you've developed your brand and your expertise, then you can work on selling it. And that's really, if you don't have that baseline, you may be able to get a few clients in the door, but that's not the situation that's going to keep clients. And in our business, especially in litigation boutiques, we're farmers, we're not hunters. We want to develop long-term relationships with our clients, and that means giving them the best representation you can for the best value, getting them the best results, and all that starts with being the best lawyer first. So,
Excellent advice. Perfecting your craft.
yeah,
I get it. Because really, I was the first agency I ran. I was 26 years old. Really trying to, as a director of the agency, trying to establish trust in the marketplace, going into some businesses that are 30, 35 years in existence and giving them strategies and asking them to trust me and deploying that strategy. The reality is a major component of that, if not more than half of that, is purely confidence. Walking in the board or walking into the room knowing I have the confidence to believe in what I'm suggesting to someone. But in order for me to have that confidence, it can't be fake it till you make it. I have
Yeah.
to legitimately have the skill set that I know in the back of my mind, hey, this person can be benefited by my expertise or this company, you know? And so when I walk in, I carry myself like that. And that establishes some of the trust, knowing I can back up what I say. So I love that. That is solid advice because we have to first, we could have the greatest marketing in the world.
Right.
We're in a service-based business. And if we're not first great at what we do, the service we perform, the marketing is going to be just about worthless. You
Yeah.
may be able to, skate by and survive, I guess, so to speak, but it's going to be harder to scale exponentially. This has been a great conversation. Ryan McComber for Figari Davenport. Ryan, where can we find you and the firm online?
Yeah, we're at www.figdav.com, figdav.com. That's probably the best place to find us.
Excellent. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being on the podcast, Ryan. Look forward to continuing the conversation sometime.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate the time. Thanks again.